From a young man who took a shotgun to school and murdered some of his schoolmates, to a teenager murdering a young girl because she wanted to know what it feels like, we take a look at 5 of the most evil children in the world. Number 5. Jasmine Richardson. Jasmine Richardson was just 12 years old when she viciously murdered her parents and younger brother in Medicine Hat, Alberta, making her the youngest person ever to be convicted of multiple murders in Canada. Police initially feared that Jasmine also may have been a casualty, since she was missing after the bodies were discovered on April 23, 2006. She was located in perfect health soon after, in the company of her boyfriend, 23-year-old Jeremy Allen Steinke. Both Steinke and Richardson had a thing for goth culture, including vampires and monsters. After being convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder in 2007, she received a 10-year prison sentence, which is the maximum penalty for anyone under 14 years old in Canada. Number 4. Alyssa Bustamante. In 2009, 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante brutally murdered Elizabeth Olten, who was just 9 years old. People's perception of Bustamante was already fairly dark. Black mascara, emo dress, and typically overly dramatic. It turns out she was even sicker than people thought. Apparently, she also considered murdering her 2 younger siblings. She would often play dangerous tricks on them and post pictures with mischievous subtitles. Elizabeth Olten, the victim, was merely walking home one day and decided to take a forest path. Bustamante was lying in wait near 2 unmarked graves that she probably dug for her 2 siblings. Olten was strangled, beaten, and finally had her throat cut. When asked what the motive was for the murder, Bustamante admitted that she, quote, wanted to know what it felt like. Number 3. Evan Ramsay. In 1997, Evan Ramsay got on the school bus just like any other day, except for the fact that he had armed himself with a Mossberg 500 12-gauge shotgun. After entering the school and making his way to the student commons area, he pulled out the weapon and shot classmate Josh Palacios, 15 years old, in the stomach. He then wounded 2 other schoolmates before an art teacher, Rain Athanas, entered the scene. Athanas tried to get Ramsay to surrender, unsuccessfully. Ramsay made his way to the main lobby and executed Principal Ron Edwards. He then returned to the commons area, even shooting at police. When facing capture, Ramsay turned the shotgun on himself, but decided he didn't want to die and laid it down on the ground and surrendered. Number 2. Joshua Phillips. Joshua Phillips, 14 years old, brutally beat his 8-year-old neighbor to death and hid her body underneath his bed in 1998. After an entire week, his mother finally noticed something leaking from under the bed. Josh's story was that he had accidentally hit Maggie with a baseball bat. She started to scream and he panicked, so he dragged her back to his house, where he continued to hit her with the bat and then stabbed her 11 times. This story didn't fly in court, and a Florida jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. He was tried and convicted in adult court, and his mother is still appealing this decision. Number 1. Jesse Pomeroy. The case of this young man dates back to 1874, when Jesse Pomeroy was just 14 years old. Pomeroy was labeled the Boston Boy Fiend because of the savage homicide of a 4-year-old boy. Not surprisingly, this wasn't the first violent crime that Jesse Pomeroy was a part of. 3 years earlier, he allegedly committed some sexual misconduct with 7 different boys. Rather than being sent to jail, Pomeroy's sentence was to go to a children's reform school. After earning an early release, he raped and murdered a 10-year-old female customer of his mother's store. Sadly, the story doesn't even end there. Within another month, he kidnapped a 4-year-old boy, took him to a marsh near town, and cut him so deep that he almost cut his head off. After being apprehended, authorities showed him the body and asked whether he was guilty. His response was an unconcerned, "I suppose I did." Another girl was later found buried in his mother's cellar. This savage young man confessed to all of those crimes and was convicted and sentenced to death. Despite the conviction, confession, and sentence, there was a public outcry against giving a child the death penalty. Pomeroy's sentence was changed to 40 years of solitary confinement.